This is pretty much the standard setup when I'm playing at a club or a festival right now. You've got the Allen & Heath 62 or 92 in the middle for the mixer, and then two Allen & Heath 1D controllers, which are doing all my MIDI controlling of my computers. And of course, the two computers, one running some extra effects, and my main computer running Traktor with 4 decks and all the features we're going to talk about today. Actually, one of the best features for me right now, which is probably one of the features that scares a lot of people, and there's a little bit of controversy about, is that I'm letting Traktor now sync my tracks. You know, I take some time before the gig to make sure the beat maps are done, but once I'm playing, I'm really allowing the computer to make sure those things stay in time. And some people say that's not DJing, but for me it's opened up a whole new world of possibilities, because now I can focus my attention on the looping, the changing the size, taking things out of time and bringing them back when I want, and also using, you know, the effects from, you know, whatever kind of effects I want. So in Traktor right now I have a beat masher in here, and I have my 1D controlling each of the turntables, allowing me to bring in that effect whenever I want. And I can change it on the fly. And of course, you can do that to multiple decks at a time. And you know, it's always nice to, in my opinion, do things that go off time and get a bit fucked up. So that's really easy. These are, again, always controlling certain parameters for each effect, whether I'm on a beat matcher or if I'm in one of the internal reverbs or flangers, and it's really quick access. And again, it's you know, that's the thing. You can't look at you know, allowing the computer to do one thing is only boring if you don't use the time that the computer saves you to do something else. And that's, you know, that's why I'm using this. One of the most important things you have to worry about when you're using, you know, especially 4 decks, is time. You know, you don't want to waste time finding music, and you don't want to waste time, you know, making sure it's the right track or finding the right part of the record you want to play. So, you know, it's very easy to go through all my folders here to find the tracks. I have hotkeys to jump up and down to the top of my file structures, and then as soon as I found a track to load, you know, I pick my deck here, 1, 2, 3, or 4, load it into 1, and we're there. That's fast, but you know, as a turntablist originally, one of the things that I love to do is like put the record on, or even, you know, with Traktor Scratch, put the track on and then quickly skip through it and find out which part I wanted to play, or to be honest, sometimes make sure it was the track I thought it was. And I found a really great way to do that now. Once I load the track in, I have one knob here which actually lets me scan through the track really quickly. And what's really cool is that I can actually play this track in my headphones. It's in sync to what's playing to the people, and at the same time skip through the track and make sure it's the right one, or find the part I want to start at, and then, you know, I don't even have to restart it. I can be like, okay, let's bring it up, it's on time, you know, or, you know, quickly jump back to the beginning of the track and do an even more creative mix. But you know, that's just one of the hardest things of moving into digital DJing, especially without turntables, is really like, how do I find the tracks and how do I scan through it? And for me, this kind of like rapid scan is unbelievable. You know, it really helps me manage the amount of music coming out and the amount of music in my computer and 4 decks going at once. One of the best features on Traktor that I'm using a lot right now is the looping ability. You know, I'm running a lot of times 3 or 4 decks, so the ability to grab a small chunk and repeat it and use it as a layer of rhythm or sound or even vocals is really, you know, part of the magic of building an interesting set. So, you know, right now I have my parameters on the right side of the 1D controlling each of my decks, giving me a possibility to loop each one on the fly independently. So it's very easy to turn on a loop here and then change the loop value, the length, making it bigger and larger. and then taking the loop out and kicking back in. Or even cutting into even smaller loop. And of course, if you start adding 2 decks to that, you can kick them both in at the same time, and then kick them back in. You know, so what's great about it, the feature is relatively simple, and then it's up to you to, you know, how complex you want to make it. So 1 loop is really cool, but if you imagine getting 3 or even 4 loops, all slightly changing, you know, the length, it can get really crazy. And the way I have it mapped is that when I kick out of my loops, I have what's called a macro, which means I have 2 functions at one time happening, sometimes 3. So it kicks the loop back into the main thing, out of the loop, and then resyncs all my tracks so that I can actually let things nearly fall apart in the mix and like create their own weird delays. But when it comes back on, it's back on. And then the magic happens again. What's a double macro? A double macro is when I assign 2 or more parameters to one controller. So when I press a button or I bring a fader up, it actually tells the computer to do 2 or more things at once. And that, you know, it takes a little bit of setup, but once you do that and once you figure out your workflow, it can make things on stage really, really easy. So for instance, I said earlier, when I punch loops in and out, it starts a loop or ends a loop, and at the same time changes my sync parameters to keep things in time for me. A good example is also when I'm searching for music. You know, I always see my 4 decks in front of me, but as soon as I go into search mode, going into my browser, you see that the screen changes, I see the deck smaller, and I have much more room to see what track I'm looking for. And then as soon as I find the track, I'm going to assign it with my assign keys here. This button right here will actually load this track into record A. But as soon as I press it, it would not only load it, but it would change back to the way I need to see my screen to actually play that record. So track loaded, and now I see my 4 decks and back to a good view. So how exactly is all this set up? The right side of the 1D is basically split into 4 channels, deck A, B, C, D. I've got a way to turn on loops here, on and off. I've got effects level and effects parameters. A second row of parameters which changes depending on what effect I'm using. And this row here is connected to this loop on and off below, and here at the top, the length of the loops. So what was important for me is to have as much control over each deck as possible. On the left side, we've got another 1D controller, which some of the top parameters are controlling my effects computer. And then the bottom parameters here, these are super important. This is deck A, B, C, D. So if I want to scan through tracks, if I want to load tracks, this is a very quick way to do it. And I also have a lot of these parameters are also on the computer. So there's usually 2 ways to do everything, which is not only good for me, but you know, it's really boring sometimes just using one way of doing things. And also I think about the people out there. If they're looking at me and I'm always just doing this, maybe that's also boring. So I'm trying to do it so I'm using this 1D, that 1D. Sometimes I'm on the computer, sometimes I'm on another computer, and it's more of a, you know, part of the entertainment of a DJ is the physicality of it. You know, and everybody thinks this is interesting. But to me, this is also interesting in a different way. Yeah, so what do I do with my time now? You know, the computer has automated some of my tasks. You know, 4 decks. 4 takes a lot of time to manage, and you can't just put 4 of your favorite songs on. That's going to turn into one of your most unfavorite songs very quickly. You really have to start thinking about what I'm playing and where I'm going, how I'm going to get there, how I can layer loops again, how I can bring possibly just bass lines together. You know, it's really changed the way I've been playing, because you know, in the past I would get a lot of things sent to me, demos, or you know, Mark Hool would send me a bed track. Hey, what do you think of this idea? But I can actually use that material now. You know, material that may not be ready to be played by itself, but could be a perfect transition or a perfect bass line to someone else's hi-hats. So that's what the beauty of 4 decks, you know, means to me. And that's why, you know, I have to allow the computer to do something so I can really focus my attention on that. You know, one of the other, you know, super important things of what we're doing now is if I change to this page here, this is my clock, which is the tempo for how everything's working with my effects and the timing of the records. But there's a really important button here, which I can turn on and off with my key here, which is send. And at the contact shows, this button is actually sending over Ethernet to all the other guys' computers, Mark Hool's computer, Geizer's computer, Jesse Harthrup's computer, and I can stop and start their computers on the fly of their live shows. So when you see us all up there, this main Tractor computer is basically the heart of the whole setup. It's the timing, the clock. And that allows us to do this type of collaborative experience. That timing code is going over the Ethernet, keeping all those guys in time, and then at the contact show it gets even more complicated, because we have our 4 decks, then we have Mark's music coming through a channel, Geizer's music, you know, Jesse's music, plus an extra 4 channels of effects, all that in time. Sorry, I can't try to keep time of all that shit, forget it. You gotta let technology do what it does best on that situation. And then it comes to us to be really creative about when we're bringing up things, how we're moving from one live show to another, how we're bringing 2 live shows together, or how we're overlaying live shows to records. You know, that's the heart of, you know, why I'm using this, what this allows us to do. And in a way, it's given us the opportunity as artists, you know, especially the Minus Gang, to do a show that we could have never really done, you know, a couple of years ago. Well, we could have, but it would have been a little bit hard, you know what I mean? So it's really, you know, again, what technology means, you know, for me, it's like it allows an artist to become, or, you know, delve into a different area of creativity and hopefully come up with something that wasn't possible before.